I remember seeing the cover for Condemned in my local game shop at some point in 2008. I was 13 years old at the time, but I'd played loads of horror games growing up, so I felt like I could handle whatever Condemned was going to throw my way. I found this game more terrifying than most survival horror games though. Like honestly, this thing felt nuts to me. The fear of having a bunch of crazy people running around in the dark planning to jump out and just beat the shit out of me with a blunt object is terrifying in a way that 13-year-old me couldn't quite handle. I gave up on Condemned after the first level. But 30-year-old me? 30-year-old me loves this shit! Want to rampage through a terrifying city smashing up homeless people with crowbars? This game's got it. Want to convince yourself you're solving a crime by collecting dead birds off the street and putting them in your pocket? Condemned has that too. But seriously, something about this game always stuck with me. I don't know if it was the fear in those eyes or what, but I knew I would come back to it someday. Well, I have, and it is so much more impressive than people give it credit for. Going into Condemned, I kinda knew what I'd be in for when it came to the gameplay. I've played enough survival horror games to know that ammo was gonna be non-existent, movement a little stiff, and that there'd be doors that need keys or to be broken into aplenty. Unlike other titles where you play as a strong authoritative type though, Ethan's movement is really scuffed. My dude can't even run for longer than 5 seconds without getting out of breath. This guy is supposed to be the best in his division. You're telling me he can't even jump over this tiny gap? Ethan, my man, I don't know what to tell you. You need to work on your form, man. It's a shame because this does just feel like a poor design choice and not something that actually makes sense in the character's history. Unlike other survival games, Condemned has a feature that I've never seen in a horror game before, and that's the detective element. Since Ethan is a CSI big man, it makes sense that he would possess a variety of tools to help him do his job, as long as it doesn't require him running anywhere. There's various moments in the game where you're prompted to take out your tool to search for clues and evidence, such as blood or chemicals, that sort of thing. The player can't actually select these tools though, Ethan just equips them automatically, but I guess that does kind of make sense since he's such a hotshot, he doesn't need to second guess himself. All the cool information you do collect gets sent digitally to Rosa, who acts as your partner throughout this nightmare, and honestly these moments were the only time I actually felt safe in the game. There was such a welcome relief from the chilling atmosphere that the rest of the game puts you through. I would have loved to have had more control over these aspects of the game, but apparently it's something the developers ironed out in the game's sequel, so I'm looking forward to checking that out. Whilst Ethan might not be able to run very far, he sure can fuck a guy up with a wooden plank or a rusted pipe. The combat really stands out so well in Condemned, when I really didn't expect it to. A lot of games just don't do a good job when it comes to melee combat, and I personally never particularly enjoy it, because it can feel so empty and unfulfilling. Whether it's using a wooden plank, a massive sledgehammer, or your trusty taser, each weapon feels different and has its own quirks to it. The sledgehammer can be used to smash through doors, but charge it up long enough and you can deal a devastating blow to your enemies. If you're in a pinch and you see yourself getting outnumbered, a quick tickle from your taser can scare off the ever-growing crowd of maniacs. The combat feels challenging, and not just because you're mostly in the dark, but because your enemies are actually intimidating. The enemy AI is surprisingly intelligent for a 20-year-old game. Enemies linger in the dark, waiting for a perfect moment to strike. You might be preoccupied looking through a cupboard to find a health pack when someone jumps out at you. The enemies don't just act like pre-rendered features in a designed narrative, they feel alive and reactive and pissed off at you, and sometimes they even fight amongst themselves. The atmosphere in Condemned is so well thought out that it should be given a performance note in the game's credits. The world feels alert, much like the rabid vagrants who inhabit it. Condemned is set in a bleak, crumbling cityscape that feels almost post-apocalyptic, despite technically being a functional modern city. You explore abandoned buildings, derelict apartments, condemned schools, and forgotten subway tunnels, and every location feels lived in but also discarded. There are no safe spaces, even empty rooms feel hostile. Lighting also plays a really critical role. Most areas are covered in shadow, with only your flashlight or taser offering any form of visibility. The level design guides players through tight corridors and closed-in spaces that limit how you move, making the encounters feel more personal and terrifying. The game's soundscape also plays such a crucial role in the atmosphere of this game. There's minimal music, Instead, you're just surrounded by ambient noise, dripping pipes, distant screams, or muffled footsteps that often don't really seem to have a source. The lack of a traditional score makes every single noise you hear significant, and sound cues often blur the line between real and imagined threats, which really enhances this feeling of you losing your grip on reality even more. I touched on the game's combat system, but the fighting isn't stylish or empowering. It's more desperate and loud and messy. You rip up pipes off the wall and boards off the floor to defend yourself, and every single swing feels like survival. The crime scenes also add to the atmosphere, turning you into kind of an unwilling observer in the grisly crime scenes. These investigation scenes also really slow the pace of the game and force you to really dwell in the horror rather than try to escape it. The game constantly suggests that Ethan is descending into madness, and with each hallucination and vision, I felt that way too. Overall, this is one of the best horror experiences I've had in recent memory. In Condemned, you play as FBI agent Ethan Thomas. Now, Ethan isn't your average cop. He has the highest solve rate in his unit, but many of his recent cases have gone cold. This sets the game up in an interesting way because already as a player, you have this urge to really prove yourself. Ethan is convinced that the recent rise in serial killers is connected to a spike in other local crimes, specifically assault amongst vagrants. The game opens with Ethan arriving at the scene of a homicide in a condemned building. You're met by Detective Dickinson and Officer Becker and go through the usual cop patter. You know, like, come on, I don't get all day here. Inside, they find the body of a woman who appears to have been strangled. Ethan carries out some crime scene forensic work using his fancy gadgets and deduces that the murder is the work of someone known as the Matchmaker, a serial killer that poses victims alongside male mannequins which are all marked on the face in a very specific way. It's all got a very Netflix docuseries in the making type of vibe. Upon smelling cigarette smoke, the officers quickly realise that someone else is in the building with them, and that perhaps it's the killer. It's then that the power to the building gets cut. Cue intense feelings of dread. It's also at this moment that Ethan has what can only be described as a vision. We see an unidentified man tinkering with something on a workbench. As the angle changes, we see the man produce a severed human head. Or is it a mannequin head? Either way, this entire thing brings up lots of questions. When the vision ends, the officers decide to split up to investigate because, of course, what else are you going to do when the city is filled with drug-taking zombies? And this is when you're thrown in at the deep end. Tasked with finding a generator to get the lights back up and running, you encounter the violent vagrants for the very first time. Armed with a handgun with very limited ammo, but a desire to inflict some serious damage, you have to fight your way through various rooms and hallways. The search for the generator proves to be fruitless until you're ambushed by the killer. He takes you at gunpoint, saying cryptically,
"We are both on the same righteousness."
He knocks you out, steals your gun, and murders the two detectives. And since it was your gun that killed them, this means you're now framed for murder, officially on the run. And just like that, your badge means nothing. Now, you're the suspect. A little while later, Ethan wakes up in his apartment to find a strange man, Malcolm Van Horn, watching him sleep. Van Horn claims that he knew Ethan's father and warns him that he is now wanted for the deaths of the detectives and tells him to run. Assisted via phone by Lieutenant Rosa, Ethan heads to a nearby metro station where he finds a room with a camera pointing at his apartment. There's also a wall covered in newspapers, each one detailing a case that Ethan has worked. Although many of the pages have a hand-drawn X on them, the only ones that aren't crossed off are the Matchmaker and the Torturer. Finding evidence that the Matchmaker is in an abandoned retail store, you know, where one might expect to find mannequin dolls, Ethan decides to head there. The retail store has without a doubt some of the scariest, most oppressive gameplay. Creepy mannequins are everywhere, some with arms missing, others without a head. But it's okay, they're just hunks of plastic. They can't physically hurt you. Using your forensic tools to follow the clues, Ethan eventually finds the Matchmaker, but he's dead. Referring back to the newspapers, Rosa notes that all the articles with an X have gone cold, and she concludes that the man who took Ethan's gun is killing serial killers, hence why those cases went cold in the first place. Ethan and Rosa discuss if the killer must then be the Torturer, the only person left on the list. but they both agree that the killer's behaviour doesn't match that of the torturer's MO. They decide that it must be someone else. Rosa aptly names him Serial Killer X. Now Ethan and Rosa need to identify who the torturer is, not just to capture him, but to save him from Serial Killer X's wrath, and hopefully stop him. Realising they need to access a public database so Rosa can match up fingerprints from the crime scene, Ethan heads to the public library, where he meets up with Rosa. Here Rosa reveals that she's been doing some digging into Ethan's past and found something interesting. She's found several anomalies in Ethan's personal file. His bone and muscle density is abnormally high. He has an overactive serotonergic system in the brain. What that means is, well, we have no idea, but I guess it's good to know. And lastly, there is a chest x-ray in which the vocal cords have been covered up and redacted. Rosa tried to find out more, but the files have been classified at the highest level. But Rosa does counteract this terrible news by giving us a brand new taser, the Super Taser, so not everything's all bad. Ethan's visions are now getting more frequent, and he sees a vision of a man with metal implants in his body, most notably his mouth. He also sees a vision of Lieutenant Rosa being taken by Serial Killer X, and this one appears to be accurate, as we see Serial Killer X take her and then call Ethan, taunting him. Ethan manages to find Rosa safe and well, and she tells him that Serial Killer X tried to kill her, but she had bit him on the hand. Rosa states that Serial Killer X wanted to know everything she knew about the torturer and made her look it up on the computer. So that means that Serial Killer X now knows a lot about him, his MO, last known location, everything. Serial Killer X is, as their suspicions confirmed, going after the torturer. Then Rosa shows Ethan a news report.
Take a look at this.
This is Jennifer Alden reporting from police headquarters. Developments in the case of the torturer serial killer. A retired gym teacher from the city's juvenile rehabilitation program has informed police of contact he had almost 8 years ago with a troubled youth named Carl Anderson, who reported fantasies that matched the torturer's methods exactly. Authorities are now asking the public to inform police if they know of Carl Anderson's whereabouts. Do not approach the suspect, as he should be considered armed and dangerous. Sources within the police department are telling me they are also concerned because their informant can no longer be located. Department spokespersons have refused comment on this latest development. This is Jennifer Alden reporting for News Channel 5.
Carl Anderson. A gym teacher tells the cops on you, and now the teacher can't be found. Okay, Rosa, we have to find the school where this teacher worked.
Now they need to find the school where the teacher works. After journeying through the library's burnt section, they get to the city district records. They find the location of the school, which is St. Joseph's School for the Severely Troubled, which has been closed for 5 years. But they have an eavesdropper. It's Serial Killer X, and he knows where to go next. Ethan heads there in an attempt to get the teacher first, with Rosa going back to the lab. Ethan is surprised by Malcolm Van Horn whilst trying to break into the school. He's interested in the progress of Ethan's investigation, and Ethan is suspicious of how Malcolm has been able to find him, but nonetheless continues on and breaks into the school. Ethan finds remnants of someone's lips attached to a blackboard, and underneath the words, "Loose lips sink ships." Rosa has found that the teacher they are looking for is the gym teacher, a man named Samuel Tibbets, and the lips that Ethan found appear to belong to him. In the school's gymnasium, he lowers some basketball hoops. One has a severed arm on it, and scanning it reveals that the arm belongs to Samuel Tibbets, the teacher they are looking for. Ethan goes outside into the school playground and finds a dead FBI agent on the ground, but it's a hallucination of himself dead. He's contacted again by Malcolm Van Horn, who tells him to meet him outside the front of the school when he's finished. Ethan enters a shower room and finds the body of the teacher inside a locker. This part of the game was one of the worst jump scares I've ever come across, by the way. The teacher passes away, and Rosa tells Ethan that the pesticide sample that they found on the matchmaker's skin originates from a pesticide used for agricultural crops. That particular pesticide is unique and can be tracked to an appleseed orchard just outside the city. Ethan leaves and meets up with Malcolm Van Horn outside the school. Malcolm drives Ethan to the orchard, and on the way, they have a little chat.
So why are you in on this?
I have a sense of responsibility. I needed to help.
Help? You mean with my investigation?
Yes, among other things.
There was a time I thought I was the best investigator the Bureau ever had. Now it seems they were interested in me for other reasons.
What do you mean?
I saw my file. Apparently I'm some sort of circus freak to them.
That may not be helpful. I wonder how much they know of what is happening. I would stay away from the Bureau as long as I could.
It's not like I have much choice, since they still think I killed those 2 officers.
Their deaths were unfortunate, but maybe it's best this way.
Best? You seem to know a lot more about what's happening than you're letting on.
This is Appleseed Orchard Estate. Stay on your toes. I'll drop you off at the house and head over to the barn. I'll meet up with you later.
Ethan enters into the house and is attacked by this absolute mad lad who is dual-wielding sticks, and as you can see, he looks strangely familiar. He finds a series of 4 quotes dotted about, leading to a clue, which in itself leads him to a secret area in the basement. He finds a notebook which has lots of information about Ethan. It seems serial killer X has been following Ethan for some time. Ethan hears a commotion coming from upstairs, so he goes to check and finds that the torturer is dead by his own hand. Whilst listening to serial killer X taunt Carl, who he doesn't know is actually dead yet, Ethan changes into Carl's clothes. He watches the reflection of the TV and waits until serial killer X is close and then attacks. Ethan then chases serial killer X through the house, and after a brief fight, serial killer X beats Ethan. Ethan eventually comes to and hears Malcolm address the killer, not only as Leland, but as his nephew. Malcolm says that Leland is not himself or in his right mind. Ethan passes out again and wakes up tied up. Leland taunts Ethan and tells him that he's killed all the serial killers that Ethan was after, and that he's going to kill him too. Ethan sees another strange looking man in the rafters of the barn. Malcolm comes to Ethan's aid, wrestles his nephew to the ground and tells Ethan that the strange figure he saw is the source of the madness that has been going on, and that he needs to kill it. After a long battle through the orchards, Ethan confronts the monstrous man in the barn. The man has metal implants which need to be removed in order to weaken him, and after removing the implant from the man's jaw, he finally dies in a gas explosion. Malcolm drives Ethan back to the city. Ethan now has a choice: to kill Leland or to let him live, mercy or revenge. But it's worth noting that it doesn't make a single difference to the ending, as Leland dies regardless shortly afterwards. Sometime later, Ethan, who is now cleared of the deaths of Dickinson and Becker, meets Rosa. She explains that the FBI believes Leland was part of a cult and asks him if he knows anything about it. Before he can answer, she tips him off that she is wearing a wire. Rosa leaves and Ethan goes to the bathroom. Whilst there, he vomits and the implanted man is seen approaching him in the mirror. The man disappears and Ethan spins around, showing that his mouth now bears the same implants. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again.